Black Americans are on the whole. So, Black Americans, as I said, we have to visualize, right? We have to think about what is it that we are discussing. These are not just words. We're not comparing A to B. These are not just two sets, right? The data, the exact context is very important, right? So, Black Americans. So, I'm thinking these are people who live in US, but they are Black, right? So, essentially, at some time, maybe previous generation, previous to previous generation, or maybe 3 generations ago, they came from some part of Africa and now they are settled in US, right? Are on the whole about twice as likely as white Americans to develop high blood pressure. So white Americans, I would say, centuries ago, the ones who came to that Americas, that region and then settled there. So as far as we know, whatever we call the original, I mean, of course they're not the, let's not get into politics, just that the white people in America and the black people, so black people were more likely, who have come, let's say, a couple of or 3 or 4 maybe generations ago, right, and who settled in America. So black Americans are twice as likely as white Americans to develop high blood pressure. Okay, that this seems to be a significant stat, right? Twice as likely. Okay, so let's say if 1% of these people develop high blood pressure, 2% of these develop high blood pressure. Now, this likelihood also holds for westernized black Africans when compared to white Africans. Think about what is being compared over here. Now, it also holds for westernized black Africans. That means people who are living in Africa, but whose ways are westernized. Yeah, they wear Western clothes and have Western diets, etc. Yeah, when compared to white Africans. So people living in Africa who are white, and they're similar to black Americans. Like, for example, the ones who came to America a few generations ago, white Africans would be the whites who came to Africa a few generations ago, right? Or recently, whatever. So westernized black Africans are more likely to develop high blood pressure than white Africans. Okay. Now, researchers have hypothesized that this predisposition in westernized blacks, this predisposition of high blood pressure as compared to the whites, right, in westernized blacks may reflect an interaction between Western high salt diets and genes that adapted to an environmental scarcity of salt. Understand what is given over here. What does the argument say? It says that Black Americans, that is, people who are living in US but came recently, they are twice as likely to develop high blood pressure. And the same is also seen in westernized black Africans. So why? Then there's a hypothesis that the researchers have given, that this is because they're saying that Western diets have very high salt in them. Yeah, between Western high salt diets, so let's say your burgers and whatever fast food, it has a lot of salt, and this interaction is between these diets and genes that adapted to an environmental scarcity of salt. That means the African genes, right? The original African genes, they adapted to an environmental scarcity of salt. So this gives me an impression that in Africa there was scarcity of salt. So that is why their diets used to have less salt. So their genes have adapted to less salt. But now when these Africans, they get westernized and they start having high salt diets, then they develop high blood pressure. Does it make sense, right? Does the argument make sense? So essentially we have a hypothesis over here that this high blood pressure is because of their genes, because their genes have adapted to low amount of salt. There used to be scarcity of salt in Africa. Their genes have adapted to that. And of course, we know that gene adaptation takes generations and generations, right? And now when they are getting westernized, when these people are having high salt diets, then they're developing high blood pressure, right? So this is what the argument is telling us, and this is what we are expected to understand from the argument. Okay, let's look at the question stem. Now, I said that you have to understand the argument really well, break it down. Remember, most of your time of a CR question goes into evaluating the argument and focusing on the question stem. Options do not take much time, yeah? Let's go on to the question stem. Which of the following statements about present day westernized black Africans, if true, would most tend to confirm the researcher's hypothesis? So we need to strengthen the researcher's hypothesis. We need to find some data which will make it more likely that that this high blood pressure is because of the interaction between genes that have adapted to low salt and the Western high salt diet, right? Because of this high blood pressure is happening. So we need to find something that says, yes, yes, it is because of that interaction between them, right? Okay. So, which of the following statements about present day westernized black Africans? So, we are talking about the current westernized black Africans. That means who have, adopted the Western style of food and all, but who are black Africans originally. Yeah. Okay. A. The blood pressures of those descended from peoples situated throughout their history in Senegal and Gambia, where salt was always available, are low. So they're saying that the blood pressures of those people who descended from that part of Africa where there was always enough salt, their blood pressures are not high. Their blood pressures are low. They are all right, even though they are westernized. So again, parts of, so do you understand what this option is telling me? And not like just one of you chose this option. This is the correct answer. And I'm guessing that the reason you guys didn't think about it because is that you guys just said that, okay, it is talking about the blood pressures of people from Senegal, parts of Africa, where salt was always available. But what we are discussing are the people from those parts of Africa where salt was, scarce, right? Perhaps that is what you thought. But guys, this is the reason why I say the question stem is very important, because look at what it is talking about. It is talking about present day westernized black Africans. So he's saying that though these some of these westernized black Africans, the ones who descended from Senegal and Gambia where there was always enough salt, they do not have high blood pressure. Well, that kind of that's very positive for our hypothesis, don't you think? Yeah. Typically, so let's say if I say, okay, this is what the this is what the map of Africa looks like. I say, now I don't know where Senegal is, but in any case, let's say that, okay, there is this one part of Africa where salt was always enough. Yeah. Here the salt, there was less salt. So people over here, they developed genes such that they had adapted to low salt. Yeah. Here the salt was enough, so we can expect that people over here, their genes did not adapt to low salt because salt was never low over here, right? So now what they're saying is that when these Africans, they get westernized, that is, they're taking high salt diets, then their BP is going up, right? Then they have high blood pressure. Okay, so when these people, the ones who are from the region where there was enough salt always, when they get westernized, when they are eating those high salt burgers, nothing is happening. Their blood pressure is not going up, which means that because they had enough salt, their genes had not adapted to low salt, and that is why now high salt diets are not disrupting their systems. Do you understand? Yeah, and that is why A is my answer. Yeah, that is why this is the correct option. Yeah, don't think that this is irrelevant, because they have said which of the following statements about present day westernized black Africans. So when they are talking about these people from Senegal and Gambia, they are still talking about those who have westernized, who have been having those high salt diets. Yeah, they're saying their blood pressure is not going high, which means that salt was likely the culprit, because people from other parts of Africa whose genes had adapted to low salt, their blood pressure is going high. But for these people whose genes had not adapted to low salt because they always had plenty of salt, their blood pressure is not going high. Do you understand why it is relevant? Yeah, there's a reason why it's a little tricky. Yeah, and this is the reason, because we tend to forget that this is given, that what they are talking about, these people who've come from Senegal, they're still talking about the westernized black Africans. When they are westernized, when they start having those kind of diets, then still their blood pressure doesn't go high. So then this is definitely valid. Then it definitely makes sense. It strengthens that salt is the reason why, the white, the black Americans, let's say, or the westernized black Africans, they are seeing high blood pressure. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the other options. The unusually high salt consumption in certain areas of Africa represents a serious health problem. Okay. This is not confirming the hypothesis. Guys, we have to confirm the hypothesis. Think about what the hypothesis is. So, what is the hypothesis? The researchers are suggesting a link. They are saying that this is the reason why high blood pressure happens, right? What is the reason? This interaction between those genes and high salt diets, right? So that is the researchers' hypothesis, their opinion, their claim. They're saying this is the reason. When I want to strengthen it, what information do I want to provide? That yes, I need to give a reason why that connection, the hypothesis makes sense. Why the hypothesis could be the reason for high blood pressure. Why the researchers are right in their claim, right? Now this the unusually high salt consumption represents a serious health problem. It's a fact, whatever it is, but does it have any implication on my hypothesis? Does it help strengthen that link between genes and high salt diet? It doesn't tell me anything about that link. Do you understand? So that is why B is not the answer. Look at C. Because of their blood pressure levels, most white Africans, now we're talking about white people whose genes have not adapted to low salt, but Africans who are living in Africa have markedly decreased their salt consumption. Okay, this is irrelevant to us. We don't really, this doesn't give us any link, doesn't tell us about why Black Americans have high blood pressure, right? They have reduced their salt consumption, good for them, whatever. Okay. um Now, blood pressures are low among the Yoruba. Okay, some of you chose this also, so let's take a look at it. Blood pressure are low among the Yoruba, who throughout their history have been situated far inland from sources of sea salt and far south of Saharan salt mines. Now, this kind of weakens the hypothesis. Think about it. Yeah, not strengthen. What they are saying is that among the westernized black Africans, people who are Africans whose genes have adapted to low salt, but who are having high salt diets, among those people, blood pressures are low among the Yoruba. That is, blood pressures are not high among these people who have been situated far inland from sources of sea salt and far south of Saharan salt mines. That means people from Yoruba who are far away from salt, from sources of salt, right? So this implies that here salt availability was low in this Yoruba region, right? Now they are telling us that these Yoruba people, even though they are westernized, their blood pressures are low. Then this makes me think, okay, is salt and genes the connection? It makes me doubt my connection, isn't it? Because these people were situated far away from sources of salt, so they didn't have much salt, so their genes would have also adapted to low salt. But now when they're having high salt diets, their blood pressures are still low. So then it looks like it isn't really this salt and gene connection, isn't it? So this kind of weakens my hypothesis. It doesn't strengthen my hypothesis. Does that make sense? Yeah, so this is also not the answer. Look at E. No significant differences in salt metabolism have been found between those people who have had salt available throughout their history and those who have not. So now I don't know how salt metabolism, this is a new factor that they're introducing, which there is no way for us to understand how this impacts high blood pressure, etc., right? We don't know what is salt metabolism, we don't know the process involved, we don't know how it affects the body, etc. So of course this also cannot be the answer, right? So our answer over here is A.